My name is Kralik, and we're going to be talking today about Varroa Destructor. This time, it's about controlling Varroa in your hive with integrated pest management. As you know, it's a pretty formidable parasite, and we have to use a lot of different tactics to help reduce its numbers within our hives. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. First of all, we're going to look at the single piece of information that you will need to have at your disposal. You can listen to this talk, but believe me, it's faster to access this booklet and find much of the information that we're going to be talking about today, because you will need specific parts of it at specific times. You might have received the booklet in a packet of beekeeping information that you got at the start of this course, or you can access this online. It is part of the information given out by Honeybee Health Coalition. It is a group of scientists, primarily entomologists, that have gathered the information to help you control Varroa in your hive into one place. This is a very dense booklet of information. And believe me, there aren't enough pictures in this booklet to make reading simple. You will read it again and again until you will feel comfortable with the information. But don't think you don't understand it the first time. Okay, what is integrated pest management? Basically, it is a way of managing any pest that intervenes as little as possible with our ecosystem. We used to be able to spray all kinds of things on our fields to control pests, but what it did was knock out a lot of the beneficial insects, vegetation, whatever, along with it, and sometimes do detriment to the people using the chemicals. So this type of approach is based on sustainability, and it's science-based, and it uses a variety of pest controls to minimize cost. Some of these controls are much less effective than others, but in toto, when you put them all together, they are a way basically of delaying, and that is exposing to chemicals that are unnatural. You will have to, but you really want that exposure to be minimized. And it manages the pest, but it doesn't eradicate it. This is the integrated pest management pyramid for Varroa Destructor. This is generated for any pest. Prevention is at the base. As you go up the pyramid, there are more techniques that intervene with the organism until at the apex is synthetic miticides. Also, the least toxic approaches are at the base. So that's the way any IPM pyramid is set up. And we're going to go through each of those levels individually. Culturally, what can you do to help integrated pest management scheme? Not all of these have to do with immediately intervening with the Varroa. Some of them help maintain the healthiest hive that you can. So site selection, make sure you put it in full sun. Make sure it's well drained so it's not sitting in moisture that will be conducive to having mold in the hive. Why in sun? Because that is the best place you can put it for not getting small hive beetles. Well, we're talking about Varroa. So what small hive beetles have to do with this? It's another stressor on your bee, and you want to minimize stress on your bees so that they are better able to overcome the infection of your hive by Varroa. You want to maintain good sanitation procedures, keep the hive clean of burr comb. You want to position and mark the colonies to avoid drift, or the hives actually to avoid drift. You want to make sure that your bee knows its home. You want to change brood comb frames every 3 to 5 years. Why? because there are chemicals that accumulate in your wax, and it's best to get the old, perhaps dangerous chemicals out of the hive and refresh it every so often. Some of these things have little effectiveness unless they're combined with other controls, but all in all, they help the hive be healthier. Also, you can look at resistant stock, and I would say delay this until you become an experienced beekeeper. You're going to lose hives. We all do. Make your peace with that and learn. But these are some of the resistant types of bees. Russian, Varroa sensitive hygiene, and there's chewers and there's biters, okay? Some nip at the legs, some nip at the carapace of the Varroa. They can be very effective at controlling Varroa in the hive. The physical and mechanical controls of integrated pest management. Dusting with powdered sugar. And while I know very few people that do this, it is a way of telling the bee it's time to clean yourself. Okay, you sprinkle powdered sugar on it or on the seams of the hive, and the bees get coated and clean themselves. Now, also, you need to be aware that what you need is pure powdered sugar. The kind that you buy over the counter has cornstarch mixed into it, and usually this is not conducive for the health of your bees. So a lot of people just don't use it. Screen bottom boards, again, not particularly effective, but if you lose a couple of mites by having them fall through the screen bottom board, that's 2 mites less you have in your hive. You can learn about brood interruption, which means that you can either cage the queen. These are techniques that take some expertise. You will not be doing them in your first year. Doing splits, doing requeening, things that break the brood cycle because, as you know from my other brilliant talk, Varroa replicates in the pupal cell. And you can also do drone brood trapping with using drone brood comb. You can see this. It is a plastic comb where the cells are bigger, and we know that Varroa preferentially will enter drone brood cells before they're capped. The biological controls of IPM, those which we hope fervently for, none exist yet, but there is at least one that is being worked on, and that is a type of fungus. It is going through directed evolution that I have read to produce compounds that will preferentially target Varroa mites and not honeybees. It's coming along, but I've also read that this will be 10 years in the making. If you are starting beekeeping now, you will have to learn other techniques to help your bees control Varroa. And lastly, the chemical controls of integrated pest management, those which we are all hesitant to use. There are 8 chemicals that are legal to use on honeybees to control Varroa. You have to follow the application methods that are listed on the packages because the label is the law. You are required to do this. Especially, you have to understand that if you're giving away your hive products or selling your honey, you are breaking the law and perhaps endangering people if you misuse these chemicals. These chemicals kill Varroa by a variety of actions, and some of them are natural, made by plants. They're usually called essential oils. There's one that is not. It is a product of hops. And they're synthetic, which means they are created by a chemist in a lab. The natural ones are much stronger. They're much more concentrated in the bee product than they are in nature. And we need to keep that in mind also. But there are only 8 allowable chemicals that you can use in the hive. And we'll get to them a little bit later. So, how can you use this pyramid? Okay, before starting, get your Honeybee Health Coalition resources going. Become familiar with it. There is, along with the booklet that I showed you before, a Varroa management decision tool that's sort of fun to use. It talks about the chemicals that you will use and some of the other techniques. So you'll have to become familiar with those. But familiarize yourself with these. That is an excellent start. Learn the life cycle of your bees and your mites, because you will be able to understand what is going on in your hive better. Purchase and make screen bottom boards so that the mites might fall through. Consider buying Russian. I wouldn't consider, as I said before, buying these strains now, but certainly learn about them. If there are talks about them, go to those talks, read about them. There's a tremendous amount written about these different strains. Paint markings on your hives so that you can either paint them a different color as they are here, or you can paint distinctive markings on your hives to alert the bees that this is their home. You want to locate the hives in sun with great ventilation. This is an excellent example. So if you separate them by 50 feet, 100 feet, you have much less drift, and paint them again with distinctive markings. When you establish an apiary, you can start using drone brood trapping, brood interruption, dusting with powdered sugar, and you also have to start monitoring a minimum, as Tools for Varroa Management recommends, 4 times a year. We're not going to go over testing per se. We've already covered that. You've learned about alcohol washes. I'm sure there will be additional talks about it. But testing determines whether you need to treat and when you need to treat chemically. Now, when the mites exceed tolerable level, which you will find out by alcohol washing your mites, you're going to have to use chemical treatments. And that means you're going to have to make some choices about what chemical treatments to use. And then, 7 to 10 days later, you are going to have to determine how effective your mite treatment was by retesting for mites. It is essential that you retest. Okay, let's look at the seasonal cycle of honeybees and varroa mites. This is really important because when you understand this, you begin to understand when you are looking for mites to reach higher limits. You'll notice that in the winter, going into spring, you will have a bee population that is not all that high. The queen will start laying small patches of brood, and as you go into spring and it becomes warmer, your adult bee population will increase. And when your adult bee population increases, that allows for more nurse bees to take care of more bee brood, so your bee brood population will also increase until it reaches an apex. Say in the start of summer, usually when plants, the perennial plants and the fruit trees stop blooming. At that time, you will notice, because pollen is not coming in, nectar may be still coming in, but pollen might not be coming in as much as it had been in the spring, your brood will start decreasing, and right after that, your adult bees will start decreasing, simply because resources are not as abundant. What you have to be aware of is during this time, your varroa mites, because you have a fair amount of brood in the spring, because resources are rich, your varroa mites will also multiply in your hive. They will reach their apex a little bit after the apex that has reached adult bees. They will reach their apex right around when in late summer, early fall, the winter bee brood population is being laid and fed and raised. This winter bee brood has to be kept healthy to make healthy winter bees. And just at that time, with your adult bee population falling, your Varroa mite population rising, you can have some pretty deleterious effects on your winter bees. So you want to control the mites before they reach their apex. And remember, most mites can't be seen. You're not going to see them. When you see a bee on the thorax, or you see a mite on the thorax of a bee, notice that you don't have one mite. You have probably a pretty darn good infestation. So numerous that you saw a mite. Okay, so you are ready for bees. You got the sunny location, you got the screen bottom boards, you have the markings painted on your hive so every bee knows where home is, and you have your hives 50 feet apart if you have more than one hive. You are ready. Okay, the other thing that you're going to do once you get your packages and to ready yourself to do your first mite test is to make up a form, much like this. You probably can copy this from a screen, do a screenshot and maybe copy it or something like that, so that you can keep track of your inspections, the number of bees that you sampled, the number of mites that you found, and what you did about it, if you needed to do anything. Read this form, go back and read this form. It is also in the booklet Honeybee Health Coalition, so you can copy it from there too. And make sure you keep this as one of your records. As I said, there are 8 legal chemicals that you can use in hive treatment for Varroa Destructor. Many of the product names have APA in front of them. Talk about the active ingredient. I find it a lot less confusing. You can read there and go back and review it. The first one is APAGuard. It is a concentrated thymol oil produced by the thyme plant. There are a couple of different essential oils mixed up in Apical Life Var. Again, these are more concentrated. They're found in the plant settings. There's also a chemically, how do I say this? A chemical alteration of the beta acid of hops. That product is called HopGuard. And there is formic acid, a natural ingredient of honey, again at a much, much less concentrated amount than what you'll find in this product. There's Max, Mite Away Quick Strips, and Formic Pro. And another product, the last natural product, called Apibioxyl, which is oxalic acid. And while oxalic acid is readily available in many forms over the internet, Apibioxyl is the only legal product that you could use for your hive. Okay, the natural treatments. They're usually less toxic, they're less targeted for one species, and they have a much lower rate of resistance occurring. They're water soluble or voluble, which means they are less likely to be absorbed in wax. However, they are, in some cases, more likely to be absorbed into honey and may affect the taste of honey. And they have variable efficacy because of hive or climate conditions. A lot of them depend on the heat of the ambient temperature and the heat of the hive to volatilize, to cause the product to evaporate and be dispersed throughout the hive. You might run into the term biorational pesticides sometimes when these chemicals are being talked about, and that means that they're just chemicals that do not have a significantly adverse effect on the environment. They are essential oils, as I said, and they're known as fumigants for the most part. Not hop guard so much, but the rest of them are fumigants that are thought to cause whole organism damage by burning organs or disrupting cell membranes. And the synthetic treatments. There are 3. Abastan, which is tafluvalinate, Abavar, which is amitraz, and Checkmate, which is Coumaphos. The more you familiarize yourself with this, you will understand that both tafluvalinate and Coumaphos, Checkmate, and Abastan have already caused significant resistance development in the mite. The one that seems to be used the most by professional beekeepers is amitraz, but you can also get very good results if you are very attentive if you use the natural products. So that's what's going to be in your arsenal. Synthetic acaricides, we've gone over them. These are your legal options to use. They target specific processes. They target nervous system pathways in the mite. The chemical must contact the mite, and frequent use can cause resistance. The other thing is it is absorbed into wax more than in honey. So if you go use these compounds, be aware that you need to change your wax more frequently. And also that with any synthetic compound, because it targets specific pathways, you need to vary products that you use. And you also, it is very important that you retest because, like I said, there are mites that are resistant to 2 of the 3 of these. These chemicals, all of them, not only the synthetic ones, but the natural ones too, the naturally derived ones too, can cause tissue damage of the mites, the bees, and you. So be aware of that and protect yourself from exposure. Read the label, equip yourself so that you will not have burns, you will not breathe in the compounds. They can cause pretty substantial lung damage. The gloves that you may wear must be chemically resistant. The eye protection should cover your entire eye, including the sides. The respirator should be either acid or particulate or both. There are 2 different types of respirators, and you need to educate yourself on which one you need to use. And you always wear long sleeves and long pants to protect yourself. Gloves, chemically resistant gloves. Regular beekeeping gloves are not chemically resistant. Nitrile gloves sometimes are not chemically resistant. So you need to educate yourself on what type of gloves to buy. And eyewear, preventing any vapors from getting into your eyes. The other 2 that you'll see on the right-hand side don't do a good job on this. Lastly, the respirators. These are respirators for particulate matter, and the lower one with the sort of weird little attachments are for the acids and the gas, the different kinds of vapors. But a regular mask, it won't do. So buy what you need to keep yourself safe. Thank you. Okay, this is a chart showing you when you can treat with some of the products that I've gone over. It's really useful. It was developed by apiary specialists in Maine and in Massachusetts. Very easily, you can see that amitraz, a synthetic pesticide, is not temperature dependent. You can't use it when you have honey supers on, and it takes 6 to 8 weeks to work. You have to leave it in 6 to 8 weeks. Apogard, you have temperature limitations. You cannot use it with honey supers, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks, and it's a gel or a tray. Personal protective equipment, yes, you need eye goggles. You can look at the rest of these, Max and Formic Pro, Abibioxyl, HopGuard 2 and 3, and see the restrictions under which you can use each of these products. This is a really useful chart. You are legally bound to comply with the instructions and conditions under which each chemical can be used, as specified by the Environmental Protection Agency. You must follow the label. Even if the law changes, but the label does not, and it's an older product, you have to follow that label. Why timing is important when you test and when you treat. The goal is to protect your winter bee population. Normal bees live about 6 to 8 weeks, but your winter bees are raised to live quite a bit longer, sometimes up to 6 months. Winter bees have a greater fat content, they have a different body chemistry, and they are used to maintain warmth in the hive and to care for the small patches of brood that will start to be laid in mid-January. So they have to be the healthiest bees that you can possibly raise. Why timing is important? Again, too early, mite populations are reduced, which is great, but they can then again increase to harmful levels. Too late, mite populations decrease, but your winter bee lifespan is affected. It decreases your population, and that affects the ability of the hive to thermoregulate. Additionally, you have to determine if treatment can be done with honey supers and brood present. So there's a lot of research that goes into knowing when the best time to treat with what product. And also, a word of caution. There are products out there that claim that they are very effective and natural, and you will not be able to find very much information about them because they are not legal. Do not use these products. Sometimes they contain compounds that have no effect against mites, but promise you efficiency at removing the mite population. Don't waste your money. Don't be hopeful. Use the things that are listed in the Honeybee Health Coalition Tools for Varroa Management. If you can access some of these resources, they are excellent. To read more about mites, Megan Milbrath does a very good job of talking about planning for Varroa. She is with the State University of Michigan. And then, lastly, these are reliable resources that you can read more. There are many out there associated with academic institutions. Take your time to find them. They are well worth your time. Chance favors the prepared mind. Take some time to prepare your mind. So thank you very much, and hopefully have a great beekeeping time.